The alarm screamed through the small ship as Lee Hyun stared at the strange signal on his screen. His crew of 3 had been salvaging old metal from dead ships for months, but this was different. The signal came from something that had crashed, only hours ago. "Captain, that's not human tech," said Park Day, his engineer. The older man wiped grease from his hands and looked worried. "We should call the authorities." Hyun shook his head. The signal was weak and getting weaker. "Someone's dying down there. We're the only ones close enough to help." "Could be a trap," warned Kim Sol, his pilot. She had survived 3 pirate attacks by being careful. Unknown aliens, unknown weapons. But Hyun was already putting on his spacesuit. He had been a soldier once, before everything went wrong. He knew the sound of a distress call. It was the same in any language. The crashed ship was huge, bigger than anything humans had built. It was made of some silver metal that seemed to glow. Parts of it were buried deep in the rocky ground of the small moon. Smoke rose from broken sections. "Life signs are fading," Park Day said through the radio. "Whatever's in there won't last long." Hyun found a hole in the ship's side and squeezed through. Inside, everything was strange. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. Lights flickered in colors he had no names for. The air smelled like flowers and ozone. He followed the life sign readings deeper into the ship. Bodies lay everywhere, but they were not human. These beings were tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Their faces were beautiful but alien, with large eyes that looked like stars. In the center of the ship, he found her. She lay on what might have been a throne, but it was cracked and sparking. Her blue skin was pale, almost gray. The lights under her skin flickered like dying stars. She wore robes that looked like they were made of liquid silver, but they were torn and bloody, even dying. She was the most beautiful thing Hyun had ever seen. Her eyes opened as he approached. They were deep purple, like the space between stars. She spoke in a voice like music, but he could not understand the words. She was asking for help. "I'm here," he said, knowing she could not understand him either. "I'll get you out." His scanner showed she was dying from internal injuries and some kind of poison in her blood. Human medicine would not work on her alien body. But Hyun had been a combat medic before he became a soldier. He understood pain and death in any form. He looked at the broken throne she lay on. It was some kind of medical device, he realized. The alien technology was trying to heal her, but it was damaged. With Park Day's help through the radio, he began to fix it. "Hyun, we have company." Kim Sol's voice crackled through static. 3 ships, moving fast. They look hostile. "How long do I have?" 10 minutes, maybe less." The alien woman's eyes watched him work. She seemed to understand that he was trying to save her. When he connected 2 broken wires and power flowed back into the throne, the lights under her skin grew brighter. She spoke again, and this time he heard something that might have been "thank you" in her musical language. But the throne was only slowing her death, not stopping it. She needed real medical care, the kind only her own people could give, and the hostile ships were getting closer. 5 minutes, Hyun, Sul warned. He made a decision that would change his life forever. He picked up the alien queen, for somehow he knew that was what she was, and carried her toward his ship. She was lighter than she looked, but her skin was burning hot. "Are you crazy?" Park Day shouted as Hyun stumbled onto their ship with the alien in his arms. "We don't know anything about her." "She's dying," Hyun said simply. "We help dying people. That's what humans do." The hostile ships were close enough now to see clearly. They were black and angular, like flying knives. They opened fire on the wreckage, destroying what was left of the silver ship. "They're trying to kill her," Sul said, understanding. "They want to make sure she's dead." "Then we don't let them," Hyun said. What followed was the most dangerous 20 minutes of their lives. Sol flew their small ship through an asteroid field, using rocks for cover while the black ships hunted them. Park Day kept the alien queen alive with a mixture of human medicine and her own failing technology. Hyun coordinated their escape, using every trick he had learned in his military days. The alien queen slipped in and out of consciousness, but every time she woke, her purple eyes found Hyun's face. She seemed to be trying to memorize it. They finally lost the black ships in a nebula that interfered with sensors. Sol found them a hiding place on a small planet where they could land and rest. For 3 days, Hyun sat by the alien queen's bedside in their ship's tiny medical bay. Park Dae had rigged together a life support system that seemed to be working. Her skin grew brighter each day, and the poison slowly left her blood. On the 4th day, she sat up and spoke. "Thank you," she said in perfect human language. Hyun nearly fell out of his chair. "You can speak our language?" "I have been listening and learning," she said. Her voice still sounded like music, but now he could understand every word. "My people are quick to learn. It is how we survive." "What's your name?" he asked. "I am Queen Nira of the Vellani Empire," she said. "And you are Lee Hyun, the human who saved my life. How do you know my name?" She smiled, and it was like watching a star being born. "I have been listening to you talk to your friends. You are a good man, Lee Hyun. Your people are lucky to have you." But Hyun shook his head. "I'm not a good man, Your Majesty. Good men don't run away from their responsibilities." Queen Nira studied his face with those purple eyes that seemed to see everything. "Perhaps," she said softly. "But good men do risk everything to save strangers. Even alien strangers they have never seen before." Outside their ship, the alien world turned slowly under strange stars. Inside, a human and an alien queen began to understand each other in ways that would change both their lives forever. Queen Nira grew stronger each day, but they could not leave their hiding place. The black ships were still hunting for her, and Seoul's sensors picked up search patrols every few hours. They had to wait until it was safe to move. This meant Hyun spent long hours talking with the alien queen. At first, they spoke about simple things: the weather on the small planet, the food they shared, the strange animals they could see through the ship's windows. But slowly, their conversations grew deeper. "Why were those ships trying to kill you?" Hyun asked one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. The small planet had 2 suns, and the sky turned colors he had never seen on Earth. Nira's expression grew sad. "My mate was killed 3 months ago," she said. "Lord Vex, one of our nobles, wants to take the throne. He believes I am too weak to rule because I am a woman, and because I do not hate other species the way he does." "I'm sorry," Hyun said. He knew the pain of losing someone important. "Do you have children?" "One daughter. She is young, only 12 years old and you're counting. She is safe with my sister on the home world." Nira looked at him with those deep purple eyes. "What about you, Lee Hyun? Do you have family?" Hyun was quiet for a long time. "I had soldiers under my command once, good people who trusted me to bring them home safe." He stared at his hands. "I made a mistake. A lot of them died because of my choices." "That is why you left Earth? Because of guilt? Because I couldn't face their families? Because I couldn't trust myself not to make the same mistake again?" He had never told anyone this before, not even his crew. Nira was silent for several minutes. Then she said, "On my world, we have a saying. The leader who never loses anyone has never led anyone into battle. Your people sound wise. Some are. Others, like Vex, believe that power comes from fear and hate." She moved closer to him on the small bench they shared. "But you, Lee Hyun, you risked your life for someone you had never met. Someone who is not even your species. How do you explain this?" Hyun thought about it. "I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do." This seemed to fascinate Nira. "In Vellani culture, we help family first, then our clan, then our species. But we do not help strangers, especially alien strangers. It is considered foolish." "Maybe it is foolish," Hyun said. "But it's what makes us human, I think. We care about things that don't make logical sense." Over the following days, they shared more stories. Nira told him about her planet, where cities floated in the sky and the people could live for hundreds of years. She spoke about her daughter, who was smart and brave and asked too many questions. Hyun told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about baseball games and thunderstorms. He spoke about the soldiers he had served with. Good, People who died following his orders into a trap he should have seen coming. You carry their deaths like a weapon turned against yourself, Nira observed one day. But tell me, if one of them had lived and made the same mistake, would you hate him the way you hate yourself? Hyun started to answer, then stopped. He had. Never thought about it that way. You would forgive him, Nira continued. You would tell him that mistakes happen in war, that he did his best with the information he had, but you cannot forgive yourself for being human. How do you know so much about human nature? He asked. Because pain is the same everywhere, she said softly. I see the same hurt in you that I carry for my mate. We both blame ourselves for things we could not control. On the 8th day of hiding, something changed between them. Nira had been teaching him words in her language, and he had been teaching her human jokes, which she found hilarious even when they made no sense. They were sitting close together, looking at star charts, when their hands touched. Neither of them pulled away. Hyun, she said quietly, what will happen when my people come for me? You'll go home. You'll be safe. That's what matters. And what about you? He looked into her purple eyes and saw something there that made his heart race. I'll go back to salvaging ships and trying to forget the past. What if I asked you to come with me? The question hung in the air between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Your Majesty. Nira. Please, just Nira. Nira, he said, and... Her name felt good in his mouth. I'm nobody important. You're a queen. Your people would never accept... She kissed him then, cutting off his protests. Her lips were warm and soft, and she tasted like starlight and honey. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. You saved my life, she whispered. You are the most important person in my world right now. That night, they made love under the strange stars of an alien world. Hyun had been with women before, but never like this. Nira's skin glowed brighter when she was happy, and touching her was like holding lightning. She was strong and gentle, and fierce all at the same time. Afterward, she lay in his arms and traced patterns on his chest with her finger. On my world, she said, when someone saves your life, they become responsible for it. And you become responsible for theirs. What does that mean? It means we belong to each other now, whether we want to or not. She looked up at him with those star-deep eyes. But I find that I do want to. Hyun held her closer, knowing that this moment could not last. So do I. The next morning, Seoul's sensors detected Vellani ships approaching, not the black ships of their enemies, but the silver ships of the royal fleet. They found us, Seoul announced over the ship's communication system. Nira sat up in bed, suddenly every inch a queen again. My people have come for me. Hyun watched her put on her torn silver robes and try to fix her hair. Even after everything they had shared, she was still royalty, and he was still nobody. Come with me, she said as the royal ships landed outside. Please, Hyun, I cannot lose you too. But Hyun was already moving away from her toward the ship's exit. Your people need their queen back. They don't need questions about why she's traveling with a human nobody. You are not nobody. To them I am. He stopped at the door and looked back at her one last time. Be safe, Nira. Be the queen your people need. He was gone before the Vellani guards entered the ship. From a distance, hidden behind rocks, he watched as they carried Queen Nira to her royal transport. She looked back toward his ship until the very last moment, but she could not see him. As the Vellani fleet disappeared into space, Hyun felt like part of his soul had been torn away. But he told himself it was for the best. Queens belonged with their people, not with broken soldiers who had already failed everyone who ever depended on them. 5 years had passed since Queen Nira returned to her throne. She had spent every one of those years thinking about Lee Hyun and wondering where he had gone. Your Majesty, the search teams have found nothing in the Outer Rim, reported Jin Airi, her human advisor. Airi was one of the few humans who worked for the Vellani Empire, serving as a bridge between the two species. He has covered his tracks well. Nira stood at the window of her palace, looking out at the floating city below. Her people lived in towers that drifted through the sky like clouds, held up by technology that humans were only beginning to understand. "He saved my life," Nira said quietly. "The least I can do is find him." "Mother, why is this human so important to you?" asked Princess Kayla, who had grown from a 12-year-old child into a 17-year-old young woman. She had her mother's purple eyes, but a more practical mind. "You have an entire empire to rule." Nira turned from the window. How could she explain to her daughter that sometimes one person can change your entire world? That sometimes love comes when you least expect it, with someone you never imagined possible? "He showed me that there are good people in the universe," Nira said finally. "In times like these, we need to remember that." Times were indeed dark. Lord Vex had not given up his desire for the throne. Though he could not attack Nira directly anymore, he had found other ways to cause trouble. Reports came in daily of attacks on human colonies near Valani space. Someone was trying to start a war between their species. "The attacks are getting worse," Ari reported, reading from her datapad. "3 more colonies hit this week. The humans are starting to blame us." "But we have no reason to attack human settlements," Princess Kala said. "They are not our enemies." "Vex does not care about reason," Nira replied. "He wants chaos. A war between humans and Valani would give him the excuse he needs to take power from me." Far away, on a frontier world called Haven, a man who called himself Kim Tae was fixing a broken water pump for an elderly human couple. He had been living on Haven for 3 years now, keeping his head down and trying not to think about purple eyes and silver skin. "Thank you, Tae," said the old woman, pressing a few credits into his hand. "What would we do without you?" The man who had once been Lee Hyun smiled and waved off her thanks. Haven was a good place to disappear. It was far from the main trade routes, populated mostly by families who wanted nothing more than to farm and raise their children in peace. His only real friend was Choi Bin, a young man whose family had been killed in one of the recent attacks on human colonies. Bin worked at the local communications center, monitoring news from across human space. "More attacks," Bin reported that evening as they shared dinner at the local tavern. "That's 7 colonies in the past month. People are saying it's the Valani," Tae frowned. "That doesn't make sense. The Valani Empire has never shown interest in human territory before. Maybe they've changed their minds. Maybe they want to expand." But Tai knew better. He had spent time with Queen Nira, had seen her heart. She would never order attacks on innocent people. Someone else was behind this. Someone who wanted humans and Valani to become enemies. The next day, his worst fears were confirmed. A military transport landed in Haven's small spaceport, and soldiers in black armor began asking questions about recent attacks in the area. Tae recognized the armor design immediately. These were not human soldiers or Valani guards. They were mercenaries, the kind that worked for whoever paid them best, and from the questions they were asking, they were looking for someone specific. They were looking for him. That night, Tae packed his few belongings and prepared to run again. But as he was leaving his small apartment, he heard explosions from the town center. Through his window, he could see fires burning and people running in panic. The mercenaries were not just looking for him. They were attacking the entire colony. Tae grabbed his old military gear from its hiding place under his bed. He had sworn never to be a soldier again, but these people had given him a home for 3 years. He could not abandon them now. The battle for Haven lasted 6 hours. Tae organized the colonists into a defense force, using his military training to turn farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers. They fought building by building, street by street, protecting the families who had nowhere else to run. But there were too many mercenaries, and they had better weapons. Just as Tae was preparing for a final hopeless stand, silver ships appeared in the sky above Haven. Valani warships, moving with the grace of dancing stars. The lead ship opened fire on the mercenary forces with weapons that turned their black armor into dust. In minutes, the attack was over and Haven was safe. From the lead warship, a figure in silver robes emerged. Even from a distance, Tae knew that walk, that bearing, that presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Queen Nira had found him. She landed in the town square where Tae stood among the grateful colonists. Her purple eyes met his across. The space between them and 5 years of separation vanished in an instant. "Hello, Lee Hyun," she said softly. "I have been looking for you." The colonists around them began to whisper. Their quiet mechanic was apparently someone important enough for an alien queen to search for across the galaxy. "Your Majesty," Hyun said formally, very aware of all the people watching them. "Thank you for your help." "We need to talk," Nira said. Privately, they walked to the edge of town, where her guards could watch them but not hear their words. Up close, Hyun could see that the years had changed her. She was still beautiful, but there were lines around her eyes that spoke of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. "You saved these people," she observed, looking back at the town where colonists were putting out fires and caring for the wounded. "Just like you saved me. I couldn't let them get hurt because of me." "Because of you?" "Hyun, these attacks are happening all over human space. You are not responsible." "Then why were those mercenaries looking for me specifically?" Nira's expression darkened. "Because Lord Vex knows about us. About what happened 5 years ago. He is using our connection to create chaos, hoping to start a war that will bring him to power." "Then I was right to leave," Hyun said bitterly. "My presence in your life has put people in danger." "No," Nira said firmly, stepping closer to him. "Your absence has put people in danger. Vex is using the mystery of the human who saved me as a weapon. But if people knew the truth, if they could see what I see in you, everything would change." Before Hyun could ask what she meant, more ships appeared in the sky. But these were not silver Vellani vessels. They were the same black ships that had hunted Nira 5 years ago, and this time they had brought an entire fleet. The black ships filled the sky above Haven like a storm of metal and death. Hyun counted at least 20 vessels, each one bristling with weapons. The colonists in the town below looked up in terror at this new threat. "Lord Vex," Nira said, her voice hard with anger. "He followed me here." "How many ships do you have?" Hyun asked, though he could already see the answer. Nira's small rescue fleet was outnumbered 4-1. "Not enough," she admitted. "I came here to find you, not to fight a war." A voice boomed across Haven from the lead black ship, speaking in the musical language of the Vellani. Hyun could not understand the words, but he could hear the threat in every syllable. "What is he saying?" he asked. Nira's face was pale, her skin's natural glow dim with fear. "He says he has my daughter. He demands that I surrender myself, or Princess Kayla will die." Hyun felt his blood turn to ice. "Kayla is here?" "She was supposed to be safe on the homeworld with my sister." Nira's hands were shaking. "Vex must have taken her before I left." The communication system on Nira's ship crackled to life, and a young voice spoke in accented human language. "Mother? Mother, can you hear me?" "Kala." Nira ran to the communication device. "Are you hurt, my daughter?" "I am well, Mother. But Lord Vex says he will kill me if you do not give up your throne." The princess's voice was steady, but Hyun could hear the fear underneath. "He also wants the human who saved your life. He says, the human must die for the honor of our people." Vex's voice returned, speaking now in broken human language for Hyun's benefit. "You hear, Queen Nira? Give me throne, give me human, or daughter dies. You have 1 hour to decide." The communication cut off, leaving silence in the air. Nira sank to her knees in the dust of the alien world, her royal composure finally breaking. "I cannot choose between my daughter and my people. But I cannot sacrifice you either, Hyun." Hyun knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to choose. There's another way." "What way?" "We are outnumbered and outgunned. Even if we fight, Kayla will die. Not if I get her out first." Hyun stood and walked to Nira's ship, studying the enemy fleet through the view screen. "Vex's flagship. That's where he'll be keeping her, right? In the center of his formation where she's safest?" "Yes, but Hyun, you cannot possibly." "I've studied Vellani ship designs for 5 years," he interrupted. "Ever since you taught me about your technology, I know their weak points, their blind spots, and I know something else. Vex doesn't understand. Humans. He thinks we're predictable." Nira followed him to the ship. "What are you planning?" "I'm going to do something no Vellani would ever do. Something so crazy that Vex won't see it coming until it's too late. Hyun began pulling up technical diagrams on the ship's computer, his fingers flying over the alien controls that he had learned to use during those precious days with Nira. He showed her his plan, and her eyes grew wide with shock. "That is suicide," she breathed. "Maybe, but it's also the only chance we have to save Kayla and stop Vex at the same time." He turned to face her, memorizing her beautiful face one more time. "If this doesn't work," she kissed him then, hard and desperate. "It will work. It has to work. Take care of your people, Nira. Be the queen they need. Come back to me, Lee Hyun. Be the man I need." An hour later, Hyun was alone in a small Vellani fighter flying directly toward Vex's flagship. The enemy ships opened fire as soon as he appeared on their sensors, but he was not trying to avoid them. Instead, he let them drive him exactly where he wanted to go. His ship took hit after hit, systems failing one by one, but he kept flying straight at the flagship. To Vex, it must have looked like a desperate suicide attack by a mad human. At the last possible moment, Hyun ejected from his dying fighter. But instead of falling toward the planet below, he used his suit's small thrusters to push himself toward the flagship's docking bay. The explosion of his fighter covered his approach, and in the chaos, no one noticed one small figure in a spacesuit. Getting inside the flagship was the easy part. Finding Princess Kayla was harder. The ship was huge, with corridors that curved in impossible ways and rooms that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. But Hyun had learned patience during his years of hiding, and he had learned to think like his enemy during his military service. He found Kayla in the ship's detention center, locked in a cell that was guarded by 2 Vellani soldiers. She was sitting calmly on a simple bench, reading something on a small device. Even as a prisoner, she carried herself with royal dignity. The guards never saw Hyun coming. He had learned to move silently during his years as a salvager, slipping through dead ships without making a sound. Both guards were unconscious before they could raise an alarm. "Princess," he whispered as he opened her cell. Kayla looked up at him with her mother's purple eyes, but her face was young and curious rather than regal. "You are Lee Hyun, the human who saved my mother's life. We need to leave. Now." "I know who you are," she continued as they moved through the ship's corridors. "I have studied the reports. You disappeared to protect Mother from political scandal. Your mother can explain everything later. Right now, we need to get you safe." But as they reached the docking bay, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Vex's voice echoed from speakers in the walls, speaking in rapid Vellani. "What is he saying?" Hyun asked. Kayla translated, her young voice grim. "He says the human has taken me. He is ordering all ships to fire on the planet below. He will kill every human on Haven unless you surrender yourself." Through the docking bay windows, they could see the black ships turning their weapons toward the small colony, where innocent people were hiding in their homes, praying that the nightmare would end. Hyun looked at Princess Kayla. So young, but already so wise. "I'm sorry, Princess, I have to go back." "No," Kayla said firmly. "There is another way, but it requires trust." "What do you mean?" The princess smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother. "It means we do something no Vellani would ever expect. We tell the truth." Before Hyun could ask what she meant, Kayla had activated the ship's communication system. Her young voice rang out across the entire fleet, speaking in clear Vellani that every soldier could understand. Hyun could not understand her words, but he could see the effect they had. On screens throughout the docking bay, he could see Vellani soldiers stopping their work, turning to listen to their princess. Some of them began to lower their weapons. "What are you telling them?" he asked. "I am telling them about honor," Kala said simply. "About the human who risked his life to save their queen, who asked for nothing in return, who disappeared rather than cause political trouble. I am telling them that Lord Vex is a coward who threatens children and attacks innocent people." More screens showed more soldiers, and now some of them were arguing with their officers. On several ships, Hyun could see fights breaking out between those loyal to Vex and those loyal to the royal family. "I am also telling them," Kayla continued with a smile that was pure mischief, "that any warrior who harms the human who saved their queen will answer to me personally when I take the throne." The civil war in Vex's fleet had begun. The battle that followed was unlike anything Hyun had ever seen. Volani ships fought Volani ships in the space above Haven, silver energy beams crossing black laser bolts in deadly patterns across the stars. But this was not just a military conflict. It was a battle for the soul of an entire species. Princess Kala's words had split Vex's fleet down the middle. Many of the soldiers had heard stories about the mysterious human who saved their queen, and they had wondered what kind of person would risk everything for a stranger. Now they knew, and they had to choose between following a leader who threatened children or protecting the man who had protected their ruler. "Half of Vex's captains have switched sides," reported Jin Airi from Queen Nira's command ship. "But the other half are still loyal to him." Nira watched the battle from the bridge, her heart torn between pride in her daughter's courage and terror for both Kayla and Hyun, who were still trapped aboard Vex's flagship. "Can we get a rescue ship to them?" she asked. "Not while the fighting continues around the flagship," Airi replied. "It's too dangerous." Meanwhile, aboard Vex's ship, Hyun and Princess Kala were fighting their way toward the escape pods. The civil war had reached the flagship itself, with some crew members trying to capture them while others tried to help them escape. This way, called a young Volani officer who had chosen to side with the princess. "The pods are just ahead." But as they rounded a corner, they found Lord Vex himself waiting for them. He was tall even for a Volani, with skin so dark blue it was almost black and eyes like pieces of cold starlight. His ornate armor marked him as nobility, but his face was twisted with rage and hate. "You!" he snarled at Hyun in accented human language. "You have destroyed everything! Our people were pure before you came, strong. Now they follow alien ideas of mercy and weakness." "Your people were always strong," Hyun replied calmly, stepping protectively in front of Princess Kayla. "They just needed someone to remind them that strength can be used to protect instead of destroy." "You know nothing about strength, human." Vex drew a curved blade that glowed with energy. "I will show you Volani strength before I kill you." The fight was brutal and fast. Vex was stronger and faster than any human, but Hyun had learned to be unpredictable during his years of running and hiding. He used the ship's curved corridors against his enemy, leading Vex into spaces too small for the tall alien to use his reach advantage. But it was Princess Kayla who ended the fight. While Vex was focused on Hyun, she grabbed a piece of broken equipment and struck the Lord across the back of his head. He fell unconscious to the deck, his weapon skittering away. "That was for threatening innocent people," she said firmly. Then she looked at Hyun with concern. "Are you hurt?" Hyun was bleeding from several cuts, but he was alive. "I'll be fine." "Princess, we need to get off this ship." They made it to the escape pods just as the battle in space was ending. Most of Vex's remaining ships were,